Okay, so moving on with moving on with control and coordination. Okay, moving on with control and coordination. Now we are going to study some aspects. So this is something that we have basically considered, but I will just be covering the fine tunes out of it. Okay, so nervous system, basically nervous system, the human nervous system. I suppose it is visible. Okay, the human nervous system is made up of the central nervous system. Okay, so the central nervous system, and as I expressed this earlier, the central nervous system basically is this brain and the spinal cord. This is the center to the human body. Okay, so since this is the center to the human body, this is also known as the central nervous system. Okay, so we have the central nervous system out here, the brain and the body parts, sorry, the brain and the spinal cord, and accordingly we have the peripheral nervous system. So what do we mean by the peripheral nervous system? The peripheral nervous system basically means the nervous system in which, okay, the peripheral nervous system is on the outs. So all these basically the the nerves that arise and go to different parts of the body, that makes the peripheral nervous system. So we are pretty much clear that we have a brain here and we have a spinal cord, okay, which is part of the central nervous system. And in peripheral nervous system, so if you compare, in the previous slide we had studied something called as the autonomous nervous system. Okay, here the autonomous nervous system, basically in some books or in some modules, it is also presented as the part of the peripheral nervous system. It's a part of the peripheral nervous system. Okay, so we have somatic nervous system and we have autonomic nervous system. So this is basically the autonomous nervous system, the ANS, which we had studied in the earlier slide. So at times we can also consider the autonomous nervous system as a part of the peripheral nervous system. Okay, so now what do we have here in the somatic? So the nervous system, peripheral nervous system, is made up of somatic nerves and autonomic nerves. Now what are somatic nerves? This controls the voluntary actions. Okay, this controls the voluntary actions. Basically it sends the information to the central nervous system and the actions are performed. So for example, you are walking and all of a sudden there is you kind of there's a needle that kind of you stamp on a needle, so you will automatically pull your feet off. Okay, pull your feet off from that, or a thorn, maybe you pull your feet off automatically. Okay, so what has happened? Your skin is the sensory organ, it transmits the pain or the danger to the brain or the spinal cord. Okay, and you automatically perform the action. Okay, so it controls the voluntary actions, whatever responses that we are generating in our body for the stimulus that is there around us, that is basically voluntary actions, and the somatic nerves basically control these voluntary actions. The somatic nerves are the ones which control these voluntary actions. Okay, so send sensory information, they basically send sensory information to the central nervous system. Okay, now what is autonomic nervous system? It controls the body functions. Okay, now body functions means respiration, blood circulation. So all of this happens without your direct will involved in it. Whether you are sleeping, awake, running, sitting, whatever is your posture, all these functions are getting performed automatically. So that's the reason autonomous nervous system. So basically autonomic can also be written as ANS here. Okay, generally in books it is written as CNS, PNS, okay, CNS, PNS and ANS, but if you look into it, ANS is a part of PNS itself. Okay, so now, so what do we have in autonomic nervous system? We have sympathetic nerves and parasympathetic nerves. Okay, so what is sympathetic nerves? Sympathetic nerves are the ones which energize your body during an extra energy requirement. Okay, so for example, let's say you are being chased by a dog. Okay, so the body will automatically require extra energy. Where is it going to get the extra energy from? Where is it going to get the extra amount? So you are running for your life. Okay, so you are being chased by a dog, you are afraid and you are running for your life. So where is it that you are going to get this extra energy from? The extra energy is going to come by the same organs which are producing energy, by the same cells which are producing energy. However, a general trigger will be sent, and this will be sent by sympathetic nerves. Okay, so these are sympathetic nerves which are basically sending these triggers to produce more energy. When you are playing, okay, you will find that you are getting you are sweating, or your heartbeat increases. Okay, why is your heartbeat increasing? When you are playing or when you are running, your heartbeat, or when you are climbing the steps, your heartbeat automatically increases. Why is your heartbeat increasing? Because your body is in the need of extra energy. Why and how will these energy be produced? Why your body needs energy? Because apart from the regular activities that your body is performing, the internal activities, the external activities, these are regular activities, but all of a sudden the energy requirement for external activity has increased. Okay, because you are running or you are playing a sport or whatever. Okay, so your energy requirement for external activities is increased. Now how will this be compensated? By extra energy production. And if you mean extra energy production, which means that, see, the blood is the only thing. How is energy produced? By respiration. So respiration is a process by which the breakdown of nutrients occurs, or breakdown of glucose or carbohydrates occurs, and we get energy as a byproduct. Now how does this happen? Obviously oxygen is carried to each of the cells. So whatever carbohydrates are there, the oxidation of carbohydrates happens, and carbon dioxide and water vapor are released, and energy is released as well. So we have kind of have an idea about this. Now when there is an extra energy requirement, what needs to be done? So these cells have to produce extra energy. All the cells of your body will have to produce extra energy, which means that they would require more of oxygen. If they require more of oxygen, then they will require more of blood. Why? Because blood is the only medium which is carrying oxygen and which is carrying carbohydrates and nutrients as well to each and every cell of your body. So if each and every cell of your body has to contribute more energy towards an extra activity that your body is performing, obviously this energy will be gathered. The main medium of transfer of the carbohydrates as well as oxygen will be blood. So it means extra amount of blood needs to be pumped in each and every cell of your body. And how does this happen? By increasing your heartbeat. So if you see, sympathetic nerve has increased your heartbeat accordingly. Okay, for example, when you are very angry, okay, when you are very angry, then what happens? Then automatically your metabolism etc. increases. Okay, so these are sympathetic nerves in which extra amount of energy which is required by the body during a particular situation is provided or triggered. Okay, is provided or triggered. So these sympathetic nerves basically trigger those organ systems which can compensate for the extra amount of energy that is required during a certain stimulus response. Okay, during a certain stimulus response or during a sudden requirement of increased energy. So these are the ones which are sympathetic nerves. We will deal with more with this in the next slide. Now what are parasympathetic nerves? Parasympathetic nerves basically are when your body is calm, relaxed, okay, you are sitting, so you have noticed, right, when you are sitting, when you are calm, composed, then your body behaves in a different way. Look at this difference. Okay, when you are running, your heartbeat has increased. When you are sitting, your heartbeat automatically has decreased. What is causing this? Obviously, the reason why it has happened is because the energy or the external energy requirement when your body is sitting or maybe when you are sleeping is less. So why does the heart need to beat at a higher rate? Okay, when it requires, then it will beat at a higher rate, and that is basically communicated by sympathetic and parasympathetic nerves. So parasympathetic nerves are the nerves which are active when your body is calm and composed. So basically this is an energy saving mode or a power saving mode. Okay, so just as in your cell phones you have power saving mode, in that way our body also goes in a energy saving mode. Why? To experience energy. Any which ways our body is constantly losing heat energy because we are warm blooded animals. So until unless there is a requirement, we should not be exhausting our energy. So that is called parasympathetic. So parasympathetic nerves basically help the body to be in an energy saving mode, whereas sympathetic nerves help the body to gain extra energy. They trigger the organs which can supply the sudden requirement of extra energy by the body. Okay, so these were certain nerves, these were certain nervous systems. So these are the three nervous systems: the central nervous system, the peripheral nervous system, and the automated nervous system. Okay, so you can take a snapshot of the same. Okay, so we are going to continue one second. Okay, so we are going to continue here with basically the sympathetic and parasympathetic nerves, just to have a basic understanding of how our body basically reacts under the impact of these two types of nerves. So we have sympathetic nerves and we have parasympathetic nerves. Okay. So under the influence of sympathetic nerves, we are basically in a situation of in a tense situation. Basically, it's an emergency kind of situation. Emergency means there is something which has transpired in our environment, which is causing us to behave in either we have to kind of fight or we have to escape from that situation. Okay. So either we have to basically, here the situation is that of fight or flight type of situation. So there are situations in which we have to stand up and fight, and there are situations which we have to basically hop in and fly off from there. Okay. So when we are put into a very tricky situation like this, then the sympathetic nerves are undergoing their transformations. So what are, and parasympathetic nerves, when we are basically relaxed. Okay, we are in a relaxed situation. Okay, and we all go through both these types of situations. Nobody's life is so that he or she will be completely relaxed all throughout his or her life, and neither we will have a life in which there is always an emergency situation. Okay, so we have a mixture of both the lives. So when we are talking about parasympathetic and sympathetic nerves, they behave under certain situations. They trigger certain factors. Okay, so what are the factors which are there, which are noticeable in our body, which are factors of change and which are happening due to the working of these parasympathetic and sympathetic nerves. Okay, now dilate pupils. Take it. What is dilate pupils? We all have eyes, right? So when you see a person is angry or a person is very alert, when will you go alert? When there is a danger. Okay, when you see that maybe a lion is coming towards you, or maybe you are at a road and a vehicle is directly coming towards you. So will you be half sleepy or looking at it? Okay, let it come. No, right? You will get alert, right? Your pupils will budge in. So you will be alert and you will fly off from there. Okay, so dilate pupils. Dilate pupils is an indication that your body is under the influence of sympathetic nerves. Okay, so sympathetic nerves, see how it basically triggers other factors in the body. Okay, sympathetic nerves, they are in a situation, when you are in a situation when you have to either fly or rather fight the situation. Okay, wherein it's an emergency kind of situation. So there are certain triggers that will happen, and these things will be triggered by sympathetic nerves in your body. Okay, so these are sympathetic nerves basically. Okay, and we will understand their influence. So they are dilate pupils. Okay, these are basically constricted pupils. So what do we mean by constricted pupils? When the eyesight will be low. Okay, the eyesight will be low. Okay, salivation stops. Okay, in this case the salivation stops. Salivation stops means what? When we are eating, there is a saliva that is produced, and this automatically stops, because now we are not concerned about eating food, we are concerned about the danger, impending danger that is there. Okay, so salivation automatically stops. In Hindi they say gala सूख गया यार, ठीक है, इतना बड़ा danger है, मेरा गला सूख गया. That's what happens. Salivation automatically stops. Okay, when you are in a relaxed state, the salivation is normal. If you smell food, if you see food, automatically saliva pops up. If you are in a danger situation, if there is a snake which is coming towards you and you have some delicious foods around you or food stalls around you, will you look at the food stalls or rather the snake? Okay, so obviously your saliva is going to dry up here. Okay, the third is airways are relaxed, and here the airways are completely constricted. Airways, which means the wind pipes are relaxed here. Why? Because we need more oxygen to come in. When they are relaxed, more of oxygen comes in, because the body needs more energy all of a sudden. And as I said, energy is basically the co-product of respiration. So more energy is needed. So our body is kind of creating more space for the wind to come in or the oxygen to come in. So airways are relaxed. So they become more relaxed, and so that more and more oxygen can come in. Okay, so airways are relaxed. Here the airways are comparatively constricted. So we do not, when we are sitting or when we are sleeping or maybe just relaxing, we do not need much of air coming in, because we are not performing heavy external activities or trying to avoid an impending danger. So we are completely constricted. Okay, the heartbeat here becomes very fast, whereas the heartbeat here becomes slow. The heartbeat becomes very fast here, okay, and the heartbeat becomes slow here. Why? Because we need to pump in more blood, so that the blood is basically carrying the oxygen and the nutrients which are needed to various cells, so that they can produce an extra amount of energy. Okay, blood is the only carrier. And how is blood getting carried? Because it is constantly being pumped by the heart. So heartbeat will increase in this case. However, heartbeat will be normal in this case. So when you are running away from a situation, maybe a dog is chasing you, or maybe you are fighting with somebody, okay, or maybe doing a heavy exercise. So these are basically situations when your heartbeat will increase. Okay, in this case your heartbeat will decrease. Okay, stomach activity stops. So whatever stomach activities are there, they will stop, whereas the stomach activity here continues. Okay, so stomach activities of digestion and all continues here, whether here it is stops. Okay, so just take a snapshot of this. Okay, so we have here a picture of basically the neuron cell. All right, we have here dendrites. So this is the neuron cell. This entire cell is basically the neuron cell. Okay, so what do we have basically? So this is parts of a neuron with functions. So the first part here is, you see, the dendrites part. Okay, so what are the dendrites? They basically receive signals from the other cells. Okay, so if you see, they receive signals from other cells. Okay, then we have the cell body. Okay, so we have the dendrites, and then we have the cell body basically. So dendrites basically receive signals from the other cells. This is the cell body which organizes and keeps the cell functional. Okay, so this is the cell body basically. This entire part is the cell body which organizes and keeps the cell functional. Then we have the cell membrane, of course. Okay, we go down a little. Then we have the axon hillock. Okay, so this is basically the axon hillock. Let me just sharpen it a little. Okay, so this part is basically the axon hillock. Okay, this part is the axon hillock. This generates impulse in the neuron. It generates impulse in the neuron. So it is generating impulse in the neuron. Okay, so as we move ahead, we have the nucleus which controls the entire neuron. Okay, so this is the nucleus which controls the entire neuron. Then we have the axon which transfers signals. Okay, so axon is the one which transfers signals to other cells and organs. So axon transfers signals. So this is basically the axon which transfers signals to other cells and organs. Then we have the myelin sheath. Okay, what is basically the myelin sheath? It increases the speed of the signal. So this is the myelin sheath that we have. All these are basically myelin sheath. So myelin sheath increases the speed of the signal. And then we have the axon terminal. So if you come at the end of it, okay, we have the axon terminal which forms the junctions with other cells. So here we have a nerve ending which now connects to the other neuron, and so on and so forth. So it is representing the entire neuron out here. So if we kind of again summarize it, these are the parts of a neuron with their respective functions. So we have dendrites, then we have the cell body, then we have the cell membrane, the axon hillock. This is the node of Renvai. Okay, this is the node. So here one axon ends and then the other axon starts. So this is basically named after the person who discovered it. So this is node of Renvai. And here we have the Schwann cell which produces the myelin sheath. So the Schwann cell basically produces the myelin sheath. This is the Schwann cell which is producing the myelin sheath. So Schwann cells are located here which are producing the myelin sheath. This is the nucleus. Okay, so we have the nucleus here which controls the entire neuron. Okay, which controls the entire neuron. Then we have the axon, transfers signals to other cells and organs. Myelin sheath, okay, which increases the speed of the signal, and we have the axon terminal. So these are the parts of the neurons with their respective functions. Okay, so you can take a snapshot of the same. Okay, and we will continue further. Okay, so we have here a picture of basically the neuron cell. All right, we have here dendrites. So this is the neuron cell. This entire cell is basically the neuron cell. Okay, so what do we have basically? So this is parts of a neuron with functions. So the first part here is, you see, the dendrites part. Okay, so what are the dendrites? They basically receive signals from from the other cells. Okay. So if you see, they receive signals from other cells. Okay. Then we have the cell body. Okay. So we have the dendrites, and then we have the cell body basically. So dendrites basically receive signals from the other cells. This is the cell body which organizes and keeps the cell functional. Okay. So this is the cell body basically. This entire part is the cell body which organizes and keeps the cell functional. Then we have the cell membrane, of course. Okay. We go down a little. Then we have the axon hillock. Okay. So this is basically the axon hillock. Let me just sharpen it a little. Okay. So this part is basically the axon hillock. Okay. This part is the axon hillock. This generates impulse in the neuron. It generates impulse in the neuron. So it is generating impulse in the neuron. Okay. So as we move ahead, we have the nucleus which controls the entire neuron. Okay. So this is the nucleus which controls the entire neuron. Then we have the axon which transfers signals. Okay. So axon is the one which transfers signals to other cells and organs. So axon transfers signals. So this is basically the axon which transfers signals to other cells and organs. Then we have the myelin sheath. Okay. What is basically the myelin sheath? It increases the speed of the signal. So this is the myelin sheath that we have. All these are basically myelin sheath. So myelin sheath increases the speed of the signal. And then we have the axon terminal. So if you come at the end of it, okay, we have the axon terminal which forms the junctions with other cells. So here we have a nerve ending which now connects to the other neuron, and so on and so forth. So it is representing the entire neuron out here. So if we kind of again summarize it, these are the parts of a neuron with their respective functions. So we have dendrites, then we have the cell body, then we have the cell membrane, the axon hillock. This is the node of Renvai. Okay, this is the node. So here one axon ends and then the other axon starts. So this is basically named after the person who discovered it. So this is node of Renvai, and here we have the Schwann cell which produces the myelin sheath. So the Schwann cell basically produces the myelin sheath. This is the Schwann cell which is producing the myelin sheath. So Schwann cells are located here which are producing the myelin sheath. This is the nucleus. Okay. So we have the nucleus here which controls the entire neuron. Okay, which controls the entire neuron. Then we have the axon, transfers signals to other cells and organs. Myelin sheath, okay, which increases the speed of the signal, and we have the axon terminal. So these are the parts of the neurons with their respective functions. Okay. So you can take a snapshot of the same. Okay, and we will continue further. Okay, so just to cover it here, the dendrite, this is basically a neuron cell as we are going to draw it. Okay. So in the previous slide we saw basically one of the pictures out there, and here it is the neuron cell. So this is basically the dendrite part. Here we have the cell body, there is a nucleus out here. This is the node of Renvai. This entire part is the axon part, and then we have basically the axon terminal or the nerve endings. Okay. So how do we basically consider this? Neuron. Neuron is basically what? Neurons are basically specialized cells of nervous system which respond to stimulus. So neurons or nerve cells are the specialized cells of the nervous system which actually respond to stimulus. Okay. And they can be considered as the neurons can be considered as the structural and functional unit of the nervous system. They are considered as the structural and functional unit of the nervous system. Okay. Now, how is the structure? So how can we kind of draw the neuron? The neuron is basically divided into the cyton and the nerve processes. So cyton is basically a cell body which contains single nucleus. Okay. It contains a single nucleus. Okay. The Necis granules and neurofibrils. At least we should have a knowledge about it, even if it is not in your syllabus. So these are things which are contained there. So it contains a single nucleus, Necis granules and neurofibers. Then we have the nerve processes. Nerve processes are basically dendrites and the axon. So dendrites are short branched process which conduct nerve impulses towards cyton. Okay. So these dendrites basically nerve impulses, they gather the nerve impulses and they conduct it towards the cyton. So the nerve impulses are gathered. Okay, the nerve impulses are gathered and they are passed on to the cyton. Okay, so these are dendrites. So, and the axon. So if you look at this axon, okay, the axon is basically the long thread like part of the neuron. If you see, this is a long thread like part of the neuron which carries impulses from cyton to the synapse. So what is synapse? Synapse is basically where one axon gets connected to the other, okay, synapse, and then to the next nerve cell body. So ideally the nerve cell is the largest cell in our body, okay. In human beings the nerve cell is the largest cell, and that's how effective our nerve coordination is basically, okay. So this carries it. The axon is surrounded by myelin sheath. So if you look at it, the axon is basically surrounded by a sheath which is known as the myelin sheath, which is interrupted by node of Renvire. So if you look at it, the myelin sheath comes here, ends again comes here, ends again. So these are basically nodes of Renvire, okay. So these are known as nodes of Renvire. So synapse is where, what is synapse? So synapse is basically starting here, okay, a junction between two nerve cells where impulses from one nerve cell passes to the other nerve cell. So we will have a synapse here and we will have a synapse there as well. So this is basically a junction between two nerve cells where the impulse from one passes on to the other cell. So I think we are pretty much done about a neuron, whatever we need to know in terms of diagram. The diagram is important here, okay, and at times you are asked questions on the same. So we have understood the structure of a neuron. Now we will go into the basics of how it is basically functioning, or what are the different features of it, okay. So you can take a snapshot of the same.